Hey, everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
We're giving away the secrets to our method of digitally and physically finding big bucks on public ground.
This mini-series is powered by Onyx, and we deep dive into what we look for on a map, how we scout it in person, and what pins we use to help us effectively hunt deer.
This is
Public Pins.
Call me the Joker, call me the fool, when she calls out.
So today we are talking about fence crossings because it's a really big thing in the whitetail world, especially if you're hunting public land. When you hunt public land, you're trying to find a place where you have a good odds of encountering a whitetail that you would like to shoot, right? So Tyler, what is a fence crossing?
KC, I have been scouting deer for the last 5 days, and my wires in my brain are crossed right now.
Are they?
Is that the same thing?
Sometimes it is because the wires get crossed up, and that's one of the places you find fence crossings.
That's right. You know what? A lot of times landowner will do that, I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's just talk about what a fence crossing is. It's pretty easy to understand, I think, for most of us. Most of you probably already know what I'm about to say, but this is an area or a spot in particular where deer are crossing a fence. And it could be for any situation, really. It could be to go to eat, to go to bed, to just get from one property to another as they move. A deer has the ability to jump over a fence very easy. But there are particular things that make a deer prefer a spot on a fence, and that's what we're talking about.
Deer are some of the laziest, most athletic things you'll ever see, and that's what makes fence crossings a thing.
I played with a few of those guys in college too, so can we just call them deer too?
I would imagine. So that's really what makes fence crossings and being able to find particular ones a thing, I think, is the deer's laziness.
Why else do they exist?
I mean, deer have to cross a fence, let's back up. They don't have to cross a fence, but if a deer wants to leave a property that is fenced, they have to cross the fence.
There's lots of fences these days,
Lots of fences,
I think I used to like a Radney Foster, maybe Pat Green song. I think it had a lyric in it that talked about, they ruined my prey when they strung all them fences or something along that line. I'm trying to remember the exact lyrics, but essentially this landscape of America didn't have fences at one point, and now they are everywhere.
You are a free grazer. There's a movie. What was that movie? I can't remember. It was Open Range. It's one of my dad's favorites. It's kind of about that. And there's this guy on there who's kind of the antagonist who has a kind of an accent, and he says, "The free grazers," or something like that. Talking about guys who don't like fences. But
so they. Anytime that a deer needs to cross a fence or to get off of a property for any reason that's fenced is another reason why a fence crossing would exist. So
and
essentially...
Some places don't have particular fence crossings.
Particular.
That's right. We've been in Illinois, so it's particular. But some places do, and we're going to talk about how to identify that on the map and then what you actually find when you get there.
Yeah, so What situation do you like to hunt a fence crossing?
I like to hunt fence crossings. It's going to depend morning and evening some, but I like to hunt kind of a bed to feed pattern on fence crossings. I also like to hunt a rut scenario on fence crossings.
Okay.
I don't really want to hunt a fence crossing as much in early October unless there is some food very close. But that's kind of what I think. Is that kind of what you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think of them a lot in a bed to feed pattern because you're going to have, in a lot of areas, you're going to have cattle, at least some of the areas we hunt, there's cattle grazing on, graze land, creek bottom, whatever it might be, and then you've got, on the high land, you've got crops that the deer are moving to or some kind of agriculture that they're moving to. So I think of it that way. If you were to rank a fence crossing in the whole gamut of public land hotspots and public land pens, where does that rank on a scale of 1 to 10 probably?
Somewhere in the 3 or 4 range, I
Really?
imagine.
So it's a little bit lower?
Yeah,
And
I think that
preference?
you talk about creek crossings are really a top one for me. I think creek horns are a top one for me. And then, of course, there's the normal stuff like food sources and stuff like that. So I think underneath that right there is kind of where fence crossing, I think it's a pretty big deal.
I got you.
For sure. But it's probably not the top one.
I got you. So why is it not preferential for you?
Oh, I would. Were you saying 10 being the best or 1 being the best?
10.
Oh, sorry. I always think of 1 as being the best.
Do you?
I was just telling you, we were mixed up on that because I'm thinking of the University of Alabama ending the season at number 1 in the football world. So I'm thinking of fence crossing as being in that spot, and the A&M spot right there at number 4. Okay.
Okay, so it's high for you.
Yeah, it's high.
Okay, so I got you now.
Yeah.
So why is it so high? I'm talking about a place you're going to sit.
Yeah.
This is a high spot for you for fence crossing.
I'd say for sure.
Gotcha. So why does that rank that high?
Because deer are lazy, and you have to find a place that they're moving to kill them most of the time, unless you can sit up on a deer's bed, which is pretty difficult where we live and hunt a lot. Maybe in the Midwest it's a little bit easier to do, and we've kind of shown that a little bit. But I'm usually trying to hunt deer that are on the move, and I think that finding a spot that they can cross a fence a little bit easier gives you a pretty good indicator that you will have a higher concentration of deer in that spot than you will in a spot where they are not crossing the fence as often.
I think we look at this a lot from a bow hunter's perspective.
Yeah.
And so we have to a lot of times our spots may rank a little different than somebody who's a gun hunter because we have to get within 20 or 30 yards of a deer to get it killed. And I think a fence crossing kind of brings that into perspective and brings everything into a narrow spot for a bow hunter to actually get a shot at a deer. So if you're talking about it's ranking in that 3 or 4 position, which apparently is where A&M is always at.
It's better than 25.
Is it? I'm not sure. If this is a 3 or 4, what takes precedence over a fence crossing for you? A lot of times.
Yeah.
Obviously, the situations are
secondary
different.
creek crossings, food sources, and creek horns are probably going to be
So you'd hunt at the food source?
Well, hunting around the food source.
I got you.
I mean, that's
there's a lot of variables.
Podcast,
a lot of variables,
and
right?
I mean, like scrapes in certain situations. You can always give a reason why something else is better, but it's all going to. But if you just said in general, I think that
throughout the
season, I think that fence crossings are pretty high.
Cool.
Up there.
So so let's talk about how you'd go about finding a fence crossing on the map.
Well, you have to have a keen eye.
Do you?
But not the peninsula.
Is this joke going to happen every
it's
time in every
a
one
lot.
of these episodes?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. But what you're going to do is zoom in really far on your Onyx map and look at property boundaries or fence rows you can identify that are within public land parcels and find trails. And sometimes you can even do a thing, kind of do it backwards, where you find like agriculture fields that are on private land and then look around those fields and look for the trails that come into those fields. And I think that's how you're going to find fence crossings. And you can, a lot of times, we actually did a video on this, you can really see a network or a web of trails on a piece of public land that's kind of maybe heavier, thicker habitat, and you can see all those flow, like like all the tributaries of the Mississippi. They all kind of come into the river before it hits the ocean. It's the same kind of thing with a lot of these fence crossings on the map. You can find a trail on public and trace it all the way down to some fence crossing somewhere.
And I think K.C. and I hunt about 95% public land, but we have no qualms about private land hunting. It's just what we have the opportunity.
Of it, honestly. Yeah, I need more places.
Need
to
more
hunt.
access on private, But I think that when he says public, it could also be that a private landowner has a piece of CRP grass next, or a piece of CRP property next to a cornfield or something like that too. So you can actually use this to scout that CRP, the trails that go through that grass, and see where they neck down to go into. So it's not always just a public-private situation. You can see this anywhere that you can find an ag field, right? Yeah. Or if you're hunting a CRP field, then you just look at where they all end up or whatever. But exactly. However you want to look at it, essentially it's like that's a good example. Is that it's like the Mississippi. Even the big tribs to the Mississippi have a network of creeks and other rivers that come into them before they hit the Mississippi. So.
Yeah. So whenever you actually get on the ground after you've identified this, Tyler, what does that actually look like when you find a fence crossing?
You're going to find, usually in a lot of situations, you're going to find a couple different things, and this is why the fence crossing is there. I'll give you a couple of examples why they tend to exist. One, if you have, say, a private landowner that's hunting next to that public or that grassland habitat or whatever we're talking about here that you have the opportunity to hunt, they will twist the top two wires, and stick them together because they want to create a fence crossing. So literally, you're talking a 4-inch difference in the rest of the barbed wire in this particular spot that causes deer to, like you said, take advantage of their laziness and their athleticism to only have to jump 50 inches as opposed to 54 inches or whatever it might be, I think another example would be where a tree falls on a fence and knocks the fence down. A lot of times you also could have an old fence that is rusted and has broken either by cattle pushing on it or whatever, and you've just got these gaps that deer can walk through, right? And then there's also a situation where that you might have where there's a gate that is just an open gate, or also even a lot of times deer will cross a fence. Say there's a draw that runs into that ag field, or I guess technically it would run like out of that ag field down into the creek system you're hunting. In that draw may be the only trees that touch that fence, so they might go through right there. Near the trees.
Yeah, it's not always because the fence is low. But quite often, I was thinking about this a while ago. A lot of times, like we hunt riparian areas, and there's fences that run all the way down to the creek. Sometimes the deer just like to travel the creeks, so the crossing is going to be near the creek. The same thing goes for like a public-private interface. Like say you have some type of concentrated food source like a feeder, or maybe somebody has a food plot that's pretty close to a fence line. Those deer are also going to use their laziness, not because the fence is lower, but because they cross at the exact spot that fence is the closest to that food source.
Taking the shortest route there. So I think for me, a couple of things that I look for when I get to the fence crossing as a bow hunter is the opportunity to shoot a deer on that trail from a tree. If you can't find that, there's a way to brush in blinds a lot of times. Those fence line in certain parts of the country will a lot of the country, they'll grow, vegetation that you can hide in along the fence line. Some parts of the country, there may be tumbleweeds or other things that blow up against the fence line that create some kind of a natural blind that you could make. But I'm definitely looking at, can I kill a deer there really close to that fence crossing? Because the further you get from the fence crossing, the more tributaries you got. You know what I mean? So you get away from that fence crossing, and all of a sudden a deer comes from, 70 yards and joins into that trail, and you're hunting the trail that's 70 yards from there. So it's like you missed your opportunity there with a bow. So those are a couple things I'm looking for. Is there anything else that you're looking for once you get there on the ground that you need to think about in regards to hunting or scouting that area?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty good. I would always say that about anything that we discuss here, you have to think wind directions for as well, because you might be setting up on this trail and be thinking, oh man, they're going to just be coming right through here. But if your wind is blowing to that spot, that's not going to go well for you, right? You got to make sure that you kind of catalog in your mind what wind directions this place will be good for, and what time of day the deer are going to be moving through there, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so you find it on the map, you visit it, and you look around. Now it's time to put some pins down. What are you going to do there?
Well, I would assume that you're going to go to this place and it's already going to have a white X on it, because I established that for me, I rank things from 1 to 10, 1 being the top. So these are like, 3 or 4 spots, which means they're pretty good. Every time I find one, I mark it and I'm excited about it. Right?
It's a number 1.
Yeah, it's a primary spot. Right?
Yeah.
So what we do is use white for white hot, and we'll mark that X right there, drop a pin on one of these that we found while we're doing our map scouting, and then you walk up, and then you can establish if it's a place that you do feel good about hunting or not. And a lot of times I will change that to either, if it's a hole in the fence, I'll usually mark it as a trail. If it's a crossing where they're jumping, I'll usually use the crossing marker. Is that what you usually do?
I usually just use crossing, I think. I think, like, if it's a creek crossing or a fence crossing, I use the crossing insignia there, or whatever. That's kind of what I use typically, the icon. Yeah. So, and then, what I would do probably is when I track back down that trail towards the spider web or the feeder, system there of trails, I would find another couple of main trails a lot of times, and I would mark those trails on the map, as trails, obviously. And just that way I know, like, a couple of different places that I think most of the deer are coming from, because sometimes you can see, you might be able to see 6 or 7 trails coming into the main stem where everything goes across the fence. And from the map, it all looks kind of about like a good trail. And then you get on the ground and you go, oh, well, there's 2 of them that are really beat in, So you're like, okay, well, that explains where these deer are coming from, what they're doing. And then you can work back from there if you happen to want to not hunt a fence crossing because, of daylight activity reasons or whatever it might be. So
I've also gotten to the point now where I take a picture of almost every pin that I drop nowadays. Like, I'll include that photo in the pin, because it's just nice to be able to go back and if you're laying in bed one night and you're looking back at the stuff that you've already cataloged, it's instead of saying, oh, there was a fence crossing there, you can look, and sometimes that picture of like that hole in the goat wire or that twisted top wire kind of gives you really a way to remember what that spot really set up like.
Yeah.
So I would like to throw out this disclaimer or this thing to bring to your attention. Different states have different regulations when it comes to hunting a public-private boundary. So you may encounter a situation where you have to stay 30 feet or 50 yards or whatever it might be off of that boundary. So be sure you check your state regulations before you just go out there and hang a stand right on a fence line.
Do you think the states are actually trying to make it hard on us, or what's the reason for this?
Man, I feel like government in general is trying to make it hard on us. So that's a different podcast too.
Yeah, probably on a completely different platform.
That's right.
So anyway, I think that covers, for the most part, fence crossings. If you guys have any questions, if there's anything we didn't answer, feel free to send us a message on any social media platform. You can also comment here on particular podcasts on Podbean, or you can, if you listen through the Apple Podcast app, you could essentially give us a review, and we'd appreciate that as well. There is also a way to email us, so you can go to our website, theelementwild.com. And with all that said, we appreciate you guys listening.
If you're into this kind of stuff and feel like you need more, you can check out our Map Scout Challenge series on YouTube. These are the most comprehensive scouting videos on the internet.
Make sure and subscribe while you're there, and also remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.